So Eric, did you want to just make a brief sort of synopsis of where things stand now relative to sort of the moratorium, where its status, and sort of what it is that we're discussing this evening?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
will, the 3 points that I emailed to you, I will go over right now. So the first thing is a citizen petition zoning zoning amendment was submitted to the city clerk to propose a moratorium and suggest to the city that it research setbacks and other things to improve the ordinance to better protect neighborhoods, which is a very good thing. Our city attorney reviewed this citizen petition zoning amendment, and his legal opinion is that it was not validly written and the city cannot move forward with it. So that's unfortunate. Joint public hearing was still held May 10th, and both the planning board and the EDC got to hear people's thoughts on the matter, which is also good. So that's the first point. The second point is that today's meeting, you will not be providing a recommendation on that because it's invalid. What you're doing tonight is on your own initiative, knowing that it's an important matter, going to discuss and potentially initiate a moratorium on outdoor marijuana cultivation facilities to forward it to the city council for their consideration. This is separate than the citizen petition article completely. The third point I want to make is that, unfortunately, even if the city adopted a moratorium on all outdoor marijuana cultivation facilities tomorrow, it would not apply to 446 Country Club Road. Why? Because they submitted what's required an approval, not required plan that was endorsed by the planning board on May 5th. And so because of that, it puts by mass general law a 3-year zoning freeze on that property. So that any zoning amendment that occurs from the date of endorsement to 3 years, any zoning change does not apply to that property. So a moratorium is a zoning amendment. Would not apply to 446 Country Club Road. And that's the third point I wanted to make.
Thank you, Eric. And again, I guess the problem with the initial citizens petition was that it didn't stipulate a time frame. It was too general. Is that correct?
That was one of the points. Also, it didn't list a specific section of the zoning ordinance. You know, zoning ordinances have to be written up in a certain manner to be acceptable under mass general law. And unfortunately, that one was not.
Emily?
And also it didn't list very specific issues they had. It was more of a general consensus or concern. But anyways, so my question was, Eric, May 5th of the A&R approval, was that this year?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it was May 5th. It was either May 5th or May 5th. It was May 5th.
Okay.
George?
Thank you, Charles. So, and I appreciate the introduction, Eric. So essentially the public hearings were held based on the petition as a potential amendment. We're considering, we discussed that at our last meeting, and are potentially going to initiate, inspired essentially by the petition, we could initiate a moratorium on that tonight. And that would trigger another round or another public hearing. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, so it's restarting that process.
That's correct.
Thanks.
Emily?
But George, it excludes the property that the public hearing was on. It's going to basically be grandfathered in. They have 3 years where we can't change it.
Correct.
George?
Yeah, no, I'm totally understand that.
Okay.
I'm just trying to be clear about and you know, that is something that would go through the current review and approval process with the current, depending on if and when it gets submitted. It's not submitted that I know of at this point, officially. Is that right, Eric?
The board has to take, the planning board needs to take a vote whether to initiate that draft moratorium I prepared or not.
Understood. No. I'm referring to the Country Club Road proposal that is involved in all this. I didn't know if any actual proposal has been submitted to your department for.
Oh, that's a great question, George. And no, we have not received any plans for that property at all yet.
Okay.
David?
But I do appreciate Emily the double checking, because I agree, the more clear we are about what we're talking about and everybody understands, the better. Sorry, David.
David?
Didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I feel as though you folks have to drag me along here a little bit. If I understand again what Eric just said, the proposal for a moratorium that was presented as a result of the petition, and I think some conversation that the council had, that particular one did not apply. But do we know what will apply? Do we
Well,
know
that's
how-
what we're going to
is
talk
it- is
about
your-
tonight.
Eric, the amendment or the motion that you had drafted, do you feel as though that would work?
Yes, I'm somewhat of an expert in writing zoning amendments. So yes, that will pass muster with no problem.
It doesn't define what the moratorium does or what happens within it, other than the time frame. In other words, what happens to new projects that might be presented? It doesn't say anything about that. It just says moratorium. So maybe somewhere else there is a definition of moratorium.
No, a moratorium would just go with the strict whatever you call it, a dictionary definition. So, it doesn't need to be defined the term moratorium. It's clearly what everyone is clear on what that is. So what a moratorium amendment does is just state the time period. That's very key. In my experience, if you try to do over a year and a half or over, it would likely be illegal because it's too long. It's
Right.
too long of a sunset clause. You could do up to a year, no problem, which is why I propose 1 year. And that the moratorium language clearly states why the moratorium is being done and what the moratorium is on. The moratorium will be for 1 year, all outdoor marijuana cultivation facilities that come in once this is adopted wouldn't be able to happen until the city and most of the planning board comes up with specific amendments to section 200-7.17, the marijuana regulations. We want to study setbacks. We want to study other things. That will have to go through its own separate process for adoption. This moratorium just puts a stop on that for a year so that we can do the research clearly identified in the moratorium language.
And then will there have to be a public hearing and then it has to go to the city council for approval?
Correct. Any proposed amendments that we do during the moratorium will have to go through the full process as well.
But the motion to have the moratorium also has to go through public
Correct.
hearing?
Just like a regular zoning amendment. It is a zoning amendment.
It is
Yes.
an amendment.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to be quite so innocent about this, but I'll learn.
No, that's great. And I think it's helpful for the public to hear
Right.
this too.
Great questions. Great questions.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Charles, I wondered if it would be helpful to actually screen share the draft, the proposed amendment Eric put together.
Yeah,
Just
that was
run through
that was the next thing I was going to do. I thought it would be great to just let's read through it and so the public can sort of see what's on the table.
But can I just, for my own, and I'm sorry to be redundant, but this proposed one, Eric, this won't apply to the country club property, correct?
The one that we are considering tonight, any moratorium will not apply to
Would not.
446 Country Club Road for 3 years, period of 3 years.
Right, for 3 years, it won't do anything because of what we voted on May 5th.
Correct.
Because the
Okay.
A&R, right? Do you want to read through this, Eric, or shall I?
I can read through it. You know, so when you do a moratorium, you got to pick a certain section of the zoning ordinance to put it under. That's the first thing you got to consider. So section 207-3 was reserved. There used to be a ordinance under that was removed by the city. So that is a kind of a placeholder, a reserved spot for future zoning amendments or additions. So I picked 200-7.3, which was reserved for this proposed moratorium. The language has to be clear that it's temporary moratorium, which is the first word used under that, temporary moratorium. And it has to be clear on what the moratorium is on, and it's very clear on outdoor marijuana cultivation facilities. So the purpose has to be stated. You have to have a purpose statement of why you're doing the moratorium. And we're doing this to address the effects that such facilities could have in the city and residential neighborhoods. There's a definition of what a marijuana cultivator is, so it's clear. And then section C is the most important section. It gives you the time frame of the moratorium. And I'm giving it 1 year from June 30th to June 30th of 2023. The board can feel free to amend any of this or include a longer time frame, but I would recommend never going over a year and a half. And so I think it's pretty straightforward, the rest of it.
And so, you know, we've gotten lots of great email from folks, and one of the a common recommendation or hope is that we put a limit on an immediate limit on I think it was tier 1, you know, cultivation facility sizes. And so I think that what this moratorium would do is it would limit all tier levels, and so there's no possibility of any tier being able to be presented forward as in an outdoor grow facility.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. And I think one of the amendments that will be done during this year period, if you initiate this and if the city council adopts it, is that we would consider limiting any type of outdoor facility to tier 1, tier 11, but 1 tier 11, not 3 tier 11s. I think that's excessive, and we could easily do that.
And then we can also talk about, you know, minimum lot sizes to support various tier levels.
Correct.
Emily?
So I read the letter from the Office of Attorney General Maura Healey, and she said that in the moratoriums, for them to be constitutionally sound, that we need to have specific things outlined, because it's been 3 years since the law which allows facilities has been passed. So it's no longer considered to be new or unknown to towns, even though it is, you know, new to us. It's not in the eyes of, I guess, Boston. So I was wondering if we should, it's my thought that we should add in a couple of specifics of things that we're looking at and considering. One being the tiers, and then 2, the other biggest thing that is my personal concern, and then also what I read in a lot of the comments, is the water usage and that's impact. But that was my takeaway from Maura Healey's letter.
Eric, what do you think about adding some specific points of concern that we want to look at?
Well, I mean, I need to read that Attorney Healey's letter, but based on my experience, I mean, why would we do that? What if we don't do it? What if, I mean, there's many things we have to consider, and that's it. But I think the moratorium is clear of why we're doing it, to study the impacts that we could have on the city as a whole and the residential neighborhoods. There may be some things that we're not even considering now that'll come up during this 1-year moratorium. The moratoriums I've seen weren't that specific. They were drafted as I drafted this one, you know, to give a basic purpose, time frame, and basically that's it, you know. So I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, he's the Attorney General, so he's probably right, but it's my personal experience. I haven't seen it, and if we want to put specific things in there, I don't know.
Well,
either way.
Eric, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad idea, would it, to maybe, take a look at the letter or the bulletin that Emily has from the Attorney General, draft our, make any changes that you may think are appropriate or maybe none, and then run it by our attorney, just to make sure that, we're on solid ground with everything in the way it's written, and then issue it out.
And you're
Yeah,
definitely the
not a
expert
bad
in
idea.
it. I just wanted to put it out there that was my only concern, is for it to be solid, but you're definitely the expert in this.
I'm sorry, what was that last comment, Emily?
Oh, Eric's definitely the expert in this.
Oh,
I
okay.
just, and I'll defer to his expertise. I just wanted to put out my takeaway and my one concern out there. But he is the expert. You guys are, so.
Mr. Chairman, also, I appreciate that. Don't know how much expert I am, but I have some experience. Definitely, I appreciate that. I think the state is concerned that a lot of these communities are outright against it, and they're just putting very long moratoriums on everything, and not even studying the issue. And so that was the state's concern, and especially the sunset clauses of 2 years, 3 years. A lot of these were very long moratoriums, but some of them have no end dates. So that was the state's concern, probably why that came out. But I think one I have as written is okay, and we know the issues, and it's clearly stated in the record that we will consider limiting to 1 tier 11. So we can go from there.
George?
Yeah, I mean, I know we had a list and it's in our record about concerns about tier size, water usage, setbacks, a number of other things. So I don't know. I don't have a particular strong opinion of what we have would strike me as sufficient and supportable with a reference to the record of our previous two, especially the last discussion that we had, because we were very clear about the issues that we were wanting to use the moratorium time to research. So I don't know if it would have to be actually in the ordinance. And the other thing, I'm so sensitive to time issues. So I wanted to check, Eric. So say we were to vote tonight to initiate this process, and then when does it affect any additional proposals that might come forward? Again, not country club. Don't want to mislead anybody. But if there's an additional outdoor cultivation proposal for the rural residential that came tomorrow, would that be on hold because if we were to vote to initiate that tonight?
So
Would that potentially be affected by the moratorium, or does it wait till the city council votes?
great question. Neither. So basically, the zoning, the proposed moratorium goes into place at the first posting of the public hearing. That's when it is now in effect,
Okay.
unless voted down by city council.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if the board decided to initiate this tonight, and then you would post the hearing, can you do it as soon as tomorrow, or something that happens next week, or and if you could just talk about that, and then also just the overall time frame for the public hearing from the time it's posted to when the city council actually would hear it.
Sure, I can go over some time frames. So let's say the board voted today to initiate this proposed moratorium and forward it to the city council. They then have, it should be 14 days to remand it back to the Economic Development Committee and the Planning Board to both hold a public hearing. They can do it separately or jointly. Typically, it's a joint public hearing, the EDC and the Planning Board. So once I get it back from the city clerk's office saying the city council has received this and now is initiating the full process, schedule a public hearing. Until I get that, I can't schedule the public hearing. But once I get that, I schedule the public hearing. And once it's scheduled, let's say I send it to the recorder. It's not in effect then, but the first day that the recorder gets it out and that we post it publicly, that's when it is in effect, unless voted down by city council.
And so this could, if it were voted by us tonight, it could be potentially considered at the June council meeting to have it then forwarded to us in the EDC.
The meetings would happen in June, but it would likely be a July city council vote.
Oh, wait, but just to make sure we're talking about the same thing here. So the city council doesn't vote to approve our initiation.
No,
Okay?
no, they do not.
Oh.
Right.
So what is the mechanism? I'm just trying to see what has to coincide with an actual city council meeting. So the city council taking our initiative and then forwarding it to us, back to us and the EDC for a joint hearing. Does that happen outside of a city council meeting?
I think that happens at it. No, that's a good question. I think it's just acknowledgement from the city clerk's office that it was received. That's a
And
good
unless
question.
they do a specific vote to like call a special vote to vote it down, then it still qualifies as having given notice through the paper, and then it would stand.
Yeah, okay, so now I get the confusion. So when I say unless voted down by city council, that I'm talking about the very final vote after all public hearings are held and
Right.
everything is done.
Okay.
The final vote, if they voted down, then it's no longer in effect.
Right.
Okay, but it would still be in effect until and if that happened. Okay, thank you. I
Correct.
definitely was confused there.
Right.
Correct.
Right. So the sequence is we initiate, it's posted, the public hearing for the EDC and the planning board is posted, and that's when the moratorium kicks in.
Correct.
So my bias or my preference would be to vote on this tonight. So I would be disinclined. I appreciate very much, Emily, your research. I'm not an attorney. I'm not an attorney general, but I just I have a sense that this language as we have it would be supportable, especially given the record that we have. It could be referenced to of, we're not just generally avoiding it, and the fact that this is specific to outdoor grow cultivation facilities. It's not all facilities in the city, a moratorium on those. So my inclination would be to vote on this tonight. The one variable I wanted to discuss a little bit is I do think, as all of us who discussed it last time agreed, the moratorium is important to really dig deep and make some changes. I think we had talked about at least one member of the board said at least a year. A couple of us had talked about 6 months to a year. I know the feedback we've gotten from the public has been equally somewhat varied. Some people at least a year, some people a year, and some people said 6 months. One question, Eric, is because I want us to be able to thoughtfully and diligently improve our ordinance. I also don't want to unnecessarily restrict proposals for development that could be coming and would be respectful to the impacts. So one thought I have is to do a 6-month moratorium, and I'm wondering if that could be renewed if within 6 months we hadn't completed the research or the process. Just throwing that out there as a potential scenario.
Yeah, if you do a 6-month one, you'd have to start the process over once it expires.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Given that the Franklin Regional Council of Governments is working on their cluster open space ordinance, we may be considering Clara Lopez's issue. These other amendments coming up. I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff going on. I want to give this one a very careful thought, and that's why I thought a year would give us a lot of time to do it right. We have no proposals for outdoor facilities except the big one, 446 Country Club Road, which is not effect. I'm not aware of any other discussions or anybody else coming in, even looking at farmland and greenfield for cultivation. So I don't think we're gonna be holding up potential developers that much by a year worth of the moratorium.
Thank you.
Emily?
Eric, if we did it in less than a year, felt like we were nice and thorough and we came to agreement, is it possible to shorten it, to go in and amend it to shorten it if we finish ahead of schedule, if we do have that year?
Yes, you can always end the moratorium by adoption of the new amendments.
Okay. Okay.
Ah.
Thank you.
Right,
Good one, Emily.
right.
Nice. Hadn't thought of that.
Okay, so I will then, George, take your thunder and make a motion to initiate this moratorium process as written.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, thanks everybody for thinking so hard about this. George Tlemcen,
Aye.
Emily Esch,
I
David Chichester,
Yes,
Charles Roberts, aye. Okay, so it's initiated. Thank you all.
have a discussion item.
Okay,
Could I just, is this related to this issue, Emily?
Oh, no, sorry.
Is it okay, Charles, if I just make a comment?
yes,
I just want to say I do, as I mentioned before, the moratorium proposal we just voted on was inspired by citizen activism. And I just want to honor that activism and participation. And it is ironic and very troubling that the thing that motivated people is not affected by this, of course. But I just wanted to acknowledge that and acknowledge the hard work people have been putting into this. So
thanks,
just
George.
want to say that.
Thank you.
well said.
Thanks.